All right.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the Town of McCandless meeting of Town Council for September the 27th, 2021. If there's anyone who can't hear us, please let us know sooner than later. We think we fixed our audio problems that we were having last meeting, so we do apologize for that. Council Member Swagger is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, as RJ has, as RJ has already mentioned, if you wish to speak on public comment, which is item number 6 in the meeting, you are welcome to. We will do people in the room first, and then we will do people on Zoom. So this is, I'm asking you to go ahead and giving you some time to get your name and in the chat box while we go through our announcements, okay? All right, under announcements, the first thing is that Thursday, October 21st, from 5 to 7, this is for council members, the North Hills Chamber of Commerce is having a networking session, and Mike has details on that as our liaison. If you are interested in attending that, that might be very worthwhile since we are just starting to get kind of active with them. Also, we're seeking applications for citizens authority boards and committees. Please check the town website. There are many openings. Whatever your talents and your interests are, we probably have a spot for you. Also, Knit Hope is taking collections. If you came in, you notice the box, the front door to the right as you come in. And these are, this is a charity for knit hats and scarves to be given to people in need. So if you knit or you have some yarn that you would like to donate for the knitters to use, that is to the end of the month. Also, if you are interested in some information on the town deer management program, which is starting this fall, as well as the shooting range, those two things are not related, then you can get the information on mccandlessandme.com. That is our interactive website where you can read about questions and you can also place your own. I said about the chat box. So I think that's all. Moving forward to approving the minutes. Were there any corrections or additions to last meeting minutes from any council members? No corrections. All right, hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes as submitted? Yes.
Move to approve the meeting of town council minutes from September 13th, 2021, as submitted to each member of council.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Second chance, any corrections or modifications? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are accepted. Item number 5 has been removed. We was removed this afternoon, and we did put it out in the Savvy Citizen, and I guess on our website too, that the applicant has requested that this be removed. They're going to resubmit at a later date. So that has been removed from the agenda. Now is the time for public comment. So if you are in the meeting and you have public comment, the first person can come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes for your comment.
I'm Sister Mary Troutman, Sister of Divine Providence, 9000 Babcock Boulevard. And my comment.
I'm sorry to interrupt, just really quick. Since I'm from home, the microphone is a little blown out. So if you wouldn't mind just leaning back a little bit, that might fix the audio quality.
How's this? Is
Better.
that better? Okay, sorry. Every microphone's different.
Yes.
My comments relate to the proposed shooting range. And by this time, each member of the town council and town administration has received a packet that was put together by the Coalition for Safe Community Spaces. The reason we put the packet together was because so many of you, council and administration, are new to this particular issue. Also, we then have a ready resource to distribute to others outside this circle. The first document in the packet is a cover letter explaining the packet and its purpose. Then follow a series of attachments beginning with a carefully documented timeline from February 2nd, 2016 to the present, a factual record of what has actually happened along the way with respect to an office building that ended up being a shooting range. Also included in the packet is a shooting range permit, which was provided by former Chief of Police DeSanti to Sam Rosenberg, requiring compliance with certain safety conditions. We have no information that it was ever enforced or renewed. It was a one-year permit. Further on in the packet is a letter which I wrote to Chief DeSanti expressing my concerns about his safety requirements for the shooting range permit and raising questions about each clause. They have gone unanswered. They deal with safety and they've never been answered. Safety, safety, safety. More people in Western Pennsylvania have been shot and killed by guns that were not loaded than any of us would want to talk about. At the time of the failure of impacts, our Coalition for Safe Community Spaces were promised that the zoning regulations would be studied and carefully amended so that something like this didn't creep up on us again. There is a note on the new website that McCandless sent me, which says that changes in zoning regulations take months and months, but the town has had months and months. What happened to the plan to amend the zoning to require that shooting ranges may only be located in an area where they're surrounded by a wide perimeter of unoccupied space? McCandless Crossing is no place for a shooting range. The shooting range should be out in the wilderness, surrounded by unoccupied space. In Fiddler on the Roof, when someone asks the rabbi, "Is there a blessing for the czar?" he responds, "A blessing for the czar? Of course. May God bless and keep the czar far away from us." An appropriate blessing for the shooting range also. Again, we point out that safety issues have not been addressed, and the citizens of McCandless never had the opportunity to express their concerns. The public website, McCandless and Me, for people to express their concerns is a start, a good start, but it's not a total answer. In closing, I would like to share with you several quotes from the Supreme Court case, the Heller case, on the Second Amendment. The court stated, "We therefore read Miller," referring to another case, "to say that the Second Amendment does not protect those weapons not typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, such as short-barreled shotguns. Like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. It is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatever purpose. Nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings." And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments in the room?
I'm Barbara Richards. I live at 305 Manor Court. And I would like to respond to the statements the town made on its latest website, mccandlessandme.com. I'm speaking for myself, as well as on behalf of the Coalition for Safe Community Spaces. The town is saying that a 25-lane shooting range portion of the office building at 900 Providence Boulevard is permitted to operate because it is an indoor recreation center. I think the code section you're referring to, the D Development District, was written specifically for properties along McKnight Corridor in 1987, like what McCandless Crossing became, when indoor shooting ranges were not even a consideration. In the description of the uses from 1987, the town went to the trouble of saying for permitted uses, quote, "These uses are aquariums, community and recreation centers, daycare centers, older adult care centers, small format hospitals, gymnasiums, libraries or museums, nursing homes, special care homes, public or private schools, indoor recreation centers, indoor skating rinks, indoor swimming pools, indoor tennis, indoor racquetball, and indoor handball courts and hotels." Pretty specific. If the framers of this code in 1987 intended for this to mean indoor shooting ranges, then it would have included it with the other recreational activities. Are you manipulating the McCandless Code to defend your mistakes of 2018? Maybe for the purposes of protecting your liability in this case with both the residents and the developers? And now another wrinkle has come up. I have received by right to know the 2018 town's issued certificate of occupancy to Impacts, the lessee, and there's no mention of a shooting range or an indoor recreation center. But rather it mentions a training academy, a retail store, and an office space. So what's going on here? Was the shooting range improperly permitted in 2018? And now being continued in 2021, I think the residents of McCandless are owed a better explanation because this is very muddy and convoluted. And a gun property is so close to a school and other valued institutions in McCandless. You should be working with the community to make McCandless a better and safer place. Instead, this town continues to avoid taking responsibility for its actions and being accountable for what has and has not been done on behalf of the people of McCandless. One of those accountability issues is when in April 2020, after Impacts closed, President Zachary stated in the email that she was instructing the town attorney to prepare an amendment to the zoning code regarding indoor shooting ranges and the TND overlay, stating that it would cover the use being abandoned or vacant for 1 year and therefore not be allowed to operate. Did that ever happen? We inquired a few times, but mostly we trusted her word that it was being done to make sure the shooting range could not go into that space again. But nothing. But then in the 17 months since then, the town has legislated more than 8 times regarding zoning codes, sometimes in the same section of the code that the president's directive dealt with. Where was this amendment? Where's the word of the president and council worth? But thank God we can now have chickens and be fined for feeding deer. And the developers are getting a few of their requests in there too, because that was what was done in the meantime. But nothing was done to protect the people of McCandless, especially the schools and churches and homes for aging women religious less than 1,000 feet away, which brings up another dereliction of duty or even violation. We believe that the location of the shooting range has always been in violation of the Federal Free School Zone Act of 1990, which prohibits firearms from within 1,000 feet of the school. Providence Heights Alpha School pre-K to 8 is within that range. The excuse given by the former town attorney was the private property exception. This doesn't seem to hold water either. We've been told by an elected federal official that protecting private business was not the intention of this statute. It was written to protect our children in school, not to shield businesses and developers from responsibility. Even with that, you have continually thumbed your nose at the coalition by denying the statute's validity. We continue to receive guidance and legal advice about the violation of the statute. The town doesn't keep its word, not even in matters of public safety. It has repeatedly violated you have repeatedly violated our trust. Speaking now for myself as a longtime resident and a taxpayer, something is very wrong in this town. 4 of you on this stage were elected to your positions, others appointed by yourselves. Either way, where's your sense of duty of following your oath in the town of McCandless mission statement of solid core values? Do the residents have to sue this town to get you to do your job and be responsible? I was a big supporter of you, President Zachary, but I'm not so sure now you can handle being a public servant. You and the town of McCandless have lost the public trust. It's shameful and should be dealt with quickly. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Ms. Richards. Was the email that you quoted from August 10th, 2020, the one in the packet? The one that
Yes.
you quoted.
In
And-
2021? No.
It says 2020, August 10th, 2020. in your
2020.
statement? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And what did you say that statement said?
Well, you let me get my packet.
No, what you said right here in your statement that
Oh.
it said.
To prepare an amendment to the zoning code regarding indoor shooting ranges and the TND overlay.
Can I read you what it actually says?
Yeah.
What it actually says is, and this is what you've submitted to me, that the town is currently exploring the updating and simplifying of our zoning and zoning ordinances. Nothing about a shooting range. It is our hope that an update of this kind will be comprehensive enough to make new overlays unnecessary. I hope you will continue to offer your ideas and suggestions. Thank you for carrying the community.
That's not the email I'm speaking
It's
of.
what you gave me.
Yeah,
You
but
said
it's the
that
one
was-
before that. It's the one before that.
The one before that,
Not
I
that
have
page.
not made.
No, it's the one where you said that
Where?
you were directing the town attorney.
Can you show me?
Sure.
Because all I see here is, I don't see any email, and maybe you didn't include it in this, but this is the packet that I have, and I don't see that.
I have spoken at great length with our attorney about the impacts. It has been directed, he has been directed to prepare an amendment to the town zoning of gun ranges. He says the impacts building conditional use would however be grandfathered in unless the use is abandoned for 1 year. I have heard there's another company looking at that building to bring in a shooting range. That is all I know. I'm not informed. And that was April 13th, 2020.
That's April 13th then, okay, not the 10th. Are there any other comments? Right?
Hearing. My name's Rob Mulroy, and I am from Minot Road, and I am the retired pastor of St. Paul's, Allison Park, St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Allison Park. And I have been living in this township for 30 years, since appointed as lead pastor at that setting. I want to speak against a second placement of a shooting range at McCandless Crossing, but my issue is not from a zoning perspective, nor is it from a Second Amendment perspective, but from a public safety concern. Choosing to place a shooting range in the middle of multiple venues where there have been a history of mass shootings for me is an unsafe idea. None of us are able to forget that there have been local and national mass shootings with multiple fatalities at shopping centers, hotels, as in Las Vegas, ethnic churches, as in Charleston, South Carolina, Texas, and Tree of Life Synagogue in East Liberty, school names that haunt us, like Columbine, Parkland, and Newtown, hospitals and gyms like in LA Fitness in the south side in the South Hill section of Pittsburgh, several religious communities in Michigan and Pennsylvania, at universities, at the University of Texas, and tragedy at Virginia Tech, the Impulse nightclub in Florida, a multitude of workplace sites and settings, and other community squares. And so in all those situations, I am concerned about the placement of a shooting center right in the middle of our context. In the current decision that you're about to that's being recommended for Midwest to go in, as already addressed by the sister and Barbara, it seems to be forgetting about the federal school guns free zone statute, and there's some legal argument about that. And we recognize that Every day there is a mass shooting in PA, 300 so far this year. Just last week, outside of Memphis, in a predominantly white, middle to upper class suburban community in a shopping center, 13 people were shot. And so we recognize that this is an ordinary experience, and we have to be cognizant that it can happen here. I ask you to simply remember what I think is a very meaningful statement about the town mission statements. The town of McCandless governs based upon solid core values of integrity, straightforwardness, pragmatism, and an attitude of public service and selfishness. And whenever you are seated, I hope you would plug that around here somewhere to affect and touch all the decisions that you are required to make. But with this recent decision of Midwest Shooting Range, you're choosing to set aside what I think is the primary task of every town or community council, which is public safety. And I know you take this seriously because in the 30 years that I've lived here, we have had quality policing. You do a great job, you and your predecessors, maintaining our streets, keeping them clean and up to date, making sure we've got clean water and good sewage and wonderful parks and great recreation areas. Public safety is your primary task, I believe. And since most of you were not involved in the 2017 decision-making process regarding impacts, we've given you a packet of information. I hope you will read it because this is your predecessor's material based on decisions taken from minutes and citations for recorded sessions and all those things that are there. I know it'll help you. We recognize that I think the decision for impacts was a tainted process, and I hope you will read this and consider it as you have this decision before you about Midwest. The advocates for a shooting range will tell you that they have done everything possible that they can do to make this safe. And that is probably true from a legal perspective. But I tell you it's true until it's not. For in this situation, the range is safe until it's not. For in all of the mass shooting incidents that have taken place that I just recounted, and numerous others that I did not recognize, when the interviews that take place after the situation, you will inevitably hear a victim of survivor of a victim survivor family or a family member say, "I didn't think it could happen here." And we've all heard that again and again, not in a community like ours, where it can happen here. And we know from probability theory that where there are more guns, there will simply be more shootings. That's your reality. And when there's an incident like that takes place in a local community, it is our policemen that have to go in and make the first effort to resolve the situation. Then our EMTs, and we are putting them in a difficult situation. Very simply now, the placement of a Midwest shooting range in McCandless Crossing is in the middle of sites and venues where shootings have taken place. And for me, it's not a zoning issue. It's not a Second Amendment issue. It's a public safety issue. And public safety is the responsibility of any town council. And I know in this issue right now, there are legal, zoning, public safety, and core value implications.
I'm very sorry to stop you, sir, but you're 5 minutes.
One more sentence.
Thank you. It's not fair to everyone else.
I understand. One more sentence.
Thank you so much for your time and your
Thank you.
comment.
And I appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time. And I know we got smart people who can do something about this in this room among one another. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Okay.
I just want to remind everybody, as you're making public comments, lean back further from the microphone than you think you need to, because we want to make sure everything still comes through clear.
Okay, RJ. My name's Jack Casey. I live at 10030 Timbara Court in Oak Ridge, and I was originally coming to speak about the rezoning of the property on top of the hill. And that's the last thing we need is another asphalt jungle to be added to the asphalt jungle we have up there, is that just going to add more water to Pine Creek. So I'm happy that they withdrew their application, and we're going to anxiously watch to see what they want to do to redevelop that property. Tonight, since I have to pivot to talk about something else, I know you're going to talk about sidewalks. And I couldn't go to the last meeting. I had a Defenders of Freedom golf outing, and I zoomed in and I listened to the comments that you made, Kim. And it was, to me, you were looking to take the funds for the funding from the sidewalk from Longview up to the Firestone dealership to try to reallocate them to funds inside the town. Am I wrong?
This is time for comment, not questions.
Okay.
Continue.
So with that in mind, I know that you commissioned a study by people that don't live in the township to go out and look at the sidewalks to see where we need sidewalks. Well, for 30 years, Oak Ridge has been asking for these sidewalks. And then we were told we were going to get them when they did the flats. And when they did the flats, they stopped 2 businesses short of the commercial district, didn't finish their project. And then they didn't widen the road for that one little section, but they widened it all the way down Pine Creek Hill. So under the Freedom of Information Act, I went and I asked for the contracts and the grants and what have you. Well, let me back up a little bit before that. Before that happened, we met with Representative Turzai, Speaker of the House Turzai, and he said money was available for these projects, for this project specifically. So we met with Bill Kirk, and he worked with Mr. Grimm, and they got $406,000 because that's what our engineers told us was needed to do the project. And all through the pandemic, I would call Mr. Grimm and say, where are we at? He said, oh, it's one of the few projects that we're still working on. So I was led to believe we were going to get our sidewalks. Next thing I know, out of nowhere, we're told, well, you're $100,000 short. We're actually like $137,000 short after I did my right to know information. But after that, I decided, well, I'll look through here and find out where you asked for the additional money. And I couldn't find it. So I called up Mr. Grimm and said, where did you ask for additional money from the state? Crickets. And then he said, we didn't. So I called up Rob McCurry's office, and Rob McCurry said, there's money available. So I called up Senator Lindsey Williams' office and told her about the situation. And they said, there's not only one pot, the original pot, but there's 2 pots of money available to finish that project. So as you go look at all these projects that these engineers that underestimated a project by 33%, as they give you all these ideas, I want you to take in mind the people of Oak Ridge want our sidewalk. We expect our sidewalk. And if there's anything we can do to help you get that sidewalk, we'll be more than willing to do it. But we want you to take our money off the table as you look at this new project. And furthermore, I'd like to mention the fact that I went over to Longview the other day to take a look at what happens during a football game. And I was astonished at how many kids are walking that 17 inches while cars are coming by 50, 60 mile an hour. Not only that, but they're walking over from wagon wheel. I saw an entire, and I filmed this. So I'll show anybody that wants to see this. I filmed all this with my iPhone. So they walked out, his family holding hands, walked out on that little island out there where cars zipping by, because on their side of the road, it's actually worse than our side of the road. They have a guardrail. So they can, we can jump into a hillside. They have to jump into a guardrail. And remember, Mr. Farringer got killed because he couldn't get over a hillside because there was a guardrail there. So the bottom line is, it's our money. We expect you to use it on our project. And if you need more money, we'll help you go to the state to get the additional funding. With that, I don't mean to holler at you. I really respect the fact you all work for a living, and then you come home and you slosh down some food and you run out and you come here to the council meeting and a bunch of us stand up here and yell at you. And then the next day you have a board meeting and it goes on and on and on. You work really hard, and I really respect that. But I also expect you to listen to us. We've been asking for 30 years, and we really expect it to come to fruition. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Marcy Pearson at 112 Foxwood Drive. But I'm not going to talk about sidewalks, nor am I going to talk about the shooting range. But we do have an opportunity this evening to hear about the new plan for the preserve at Pine Creek. I've been spending quite a bit of time with the residents down on Pine Creek and have been very concerned about the flooding. I've also participated, frankly, in all of the planning commission meetings this year and have had an opportunity to watch how this has been developed. It's a great piece of property down there. It's going to be developed. And I think the town has done a great job with the fact of engaging the Army Corps of Engineers to put together a full study for all of the Pine Creek watershed. We could probably say that's overdue, but I think it's absolutely the right approach and the right thing to do. It's also very interesting that the developer has offered to give the town some of the some acreage that's down along Pine Creek to help with stormwater mitigation. So those are two very great things. My concern on this is frankly is the timing. Army Corps of Engineer, my brother works for them, is going to take a good 18 to 24 months to come back with a plan. So we're looking at probably early 2023. At some point would be the earliest we'd get something back. By the time you get the funding and you start all the construction work, it's going to be 2024. To my perspective, to start on a development now, where we are already seeing challenges, is a bit like putting the cart before the horse. So I do have a list of concerns, a few of them from the residents around. If you haven't been down to Pine Creek recently, and I have been walking down along there, the amount of erosion is increasing quickly. There are properties where they've lost 4 feet of their land into the creek. And it's underwriting some of the things. It's also underwriting the road into Vestal Field, the Vestal Field Road there. So it seems to me, and I'm not an expert, but I am looking at all this and getting a lot of input that it's getting worse. So a couple of questions as you listen tonight, and I know you have an opportunity to ask questions from the developers. Number one, if he gets started early, say sometime in 2022, everything works out, what's going to happen? How are they going to mitigate the water? And then how does that potentially impact whatever plan the Army Corps of Engineers comes back with? So that's kind of that's one very big question, because those homes down there are getting hit harder and harder. Second, some of those residents are on well water and they've raised concerns. What's the potential impact? How can they be protected? I don't know what the options are, but there is definitely a concern there. Third is a sidewalk. In order to have, the way I understand this development is going to work, the part that's coming out on Minor with 6 homes, if it's still the same, and again, I'm looking forward to seeing what it is it's a long driveway. There's nowhere to walk in there. So they're going to want to walk their dogs. They're going to want to take their kids trick-or-treating. And there's a really nice sidewalk on Minert, very close to your homes and up into Sudbury, which is a great neighborhood to walk, but you can't really get there. And similar points were not 60 miles an hour, but Minert, people fly down Minert. It is rated at 75, or excuse me, at 25. Nobody goes 25 down that road. So it is dangerous. And on that side, there is also a guardrail. And I know there's a creek under there, and I know there's challenges, but somehow we need to fix that. Lastly, the last thing I'd ask you to ask about is the stabilization of the hillside. That hill up to Sudbury is very steep. Again, if you haven't looked at it and walked it, it's very steep. And I know there've always been already some concerns about some shifting up there. And as they remove trees and they do other things, we want to make sure that that is maintained. Again, I think the property is going to be developed. There's no doubt about that. The question to me is timing. And the question would be, how do we mitigate things so that the flooding doesn't get any worse? In the last flood, I think the culvert underneath Pine Creek there is filling because the water started circling back. So it's definitely becoming an issue. Thanks so much for your time and looking forward to hearing the presentation later.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments? Citizens that are present? Please come up.
Hi, my name's Sam Camarda. I live on 530 Pine Creek Road. Couple of questions I have. I came down today to look at the map on the Pine Creek preservation, and something caught my eye today, which I've never saw before. The
Sorry, that's
retention,
not for you.
No, that's me playing with this because I think everything.
the retention pond that they have proposed there, when I looked at it, it's in a flood zone. It's in the 100-year flood zone. It's in the 500-year flood zone. My question would be is if it's, first of all, can you put a holding pond in a flood zone? That would be my first thing. And the second thing, if that's possible, which I don't understand how that could be, what happens when it fills with sediment when it storms and it has a flood? Who's to maintain that? And what type of situation are we in? Pine Creek is really becoming a mess. Every time it rains, not even the hard rains, it's just every time. The hard rains are getting to be like if it's the 500-year floods. The floods that we've had recently in the last 2 years, which have been 4, have supposedly been the 500-year floods or the 100-year floods. These are becoming yearly floods. I really have an issue with that. Any development right now, and I know this is something no one would not hear, would any development in McCandless that has anything to do with the Pine Creek watershed should be put on hold right now until there is some issues worked out with that creek, with that watershed. I know we're not supposed to get answers on that. I'd like to see that addressed. I know it's going to have, the plan's going to go over tonight. I would like to have been able to talk after they showed their presentation, but obviously we can't. The next problem I have is the sidewalks on Minot Road. Yes, there's a creek runs down there, but they bought the property. They knew the creek was there. McCandless is pressing everyone for sidewalks. How could we make a variance not to put a sidewalk on that property? It's completely unheard of. The last thing is, it was brought up about well. I'm one of the people on a well. I'm very concerned when they start filling on the Pine Creek side, on the roadside. They're going to build 4 houses there. There's going to be a lot of vibration with the rollers and tampers to fill that area in. That's going to definitely affect me. I've tried to contact them to see what type of arrangements could be made in case I do have a problem. And I bring that problem up because I experienced it once on Fairfield Road when they built that Winchester project. My parents lost their well. The whole street did. So, you know, the whole street lost their wells. I don't want that to happen. I got perfect water. So that is a big concern of mine of how they're going to show me that they'll be able to do something for me in case that would happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. And just to let you know that the presentation is just tonight, not the vote. So you'll have a chance to comment again at the next meeting before a vote. So, and they haven't even presented their plan yet.
Okay.
So to council, so you have plenty of time to get your opinions in. Don't worry about that.
Okay, I will be able to talk after the presentation, not this time, but the following.
You'll, in public comment at the next meeting, it will be after this presentation, but it'll be at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, yes, so you'll have opportunity, sir. Any other comments? Please come up.
Hi, my name is R.L. Shalver. I actually came for a different issue, but I heard it in the, is my volume okay?
RJ?
RJ, are you good?
Yeah, just stay about as far away as you are.
Can we get back farther?
That's perfect.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, I'm at 165 Sandal Avenue East. Actually heard about the discussion about the shooting range. I did not realize that was tonight. And I wanted to throw my 2 cents in, if you guys don't mind. I'm actually very much for the shooting range. And I appreciated having it in here. I was so excited when it came. Myself and a number of other fathers, dads, friends of mine, all of them are upstanding citizens, great fathers, devoted Christians. We love having someplace nearby that we can take our friends, we can take people from out of town. As far as the safety issue, if you don't mind me addressing that, I'd like to throw a little bit of qualifications. I've worked for 13 years in data science and analytics for an S&P 500 company that's located here in Pittsburgh. And then now I work for a software company also doing data science. As far as safety goes, I understand where the numbers come and the fear comes with firearms. They're very dangerous. But when it comes to firearms, keeping training far away from people does not make them less dangerous. It actually makes them more dangerous. The statistics, yes, show that around 50,000 people a year die at the hands of firearms. However, if you break the statistics down, you find that around 20 to 30,000 of those are due to suicide, and it's a terrible statistic to have, but that only breaks down crime statistics to much, much less than the 50,000 numbers. When you look at self-defensive situations from the FBI website, the estimates are that at least minimum 100,000 people are saved per year due to firearm usage. But whether that is, they don't break it down into whether that's by police officers or by people saving themselves. But from my experience and from my studies of the data, firearms keep people safer, not make things more dangerous. I know for me as a father, being able to defend myself and God forbid we ever had something problematic, I'm very thankful to be able to say I can train locally. I can teach my children how to be safe with firearms here in McCandless, rather than having to take them to hours away, which makes it almost impossible to be safe. If you don't know how to use something, it's like saying cars are dangerous. Cars are very dangerous. Cars kill way more people in the town of McCandless than firearms ever do. But if you don't teach people how to use them, if you don't teach people how to use them well, then cars will continue to kill people worse. Sorry, I was not prepared to make a comment on this, so this is all off the cuff. One last thing I wanted to address too, as far as public shootings and mass shootings, I understand that they happen and it grieves me, all of them. It is so incredibly sad. But the thing that I find the most sad is when I look through and I see mass shootings happening and lots of people dying. It's incredibly sad to me, but I see a number of mass shootings that are stopped by people who are trained to use a firearm and can use it well. And by using it, they stop mass shootings from being 50 to 100 to more to 1, 2, and 3 people. Case in point, the church in Texas, there was a trained firearm instructor who was able to, a guy came in to shoot and he decided the firearm instructor was able to protect everybody in the congregation from getting killed and was able to save the congregation because of his trained use of firearms. If you look at France, where there was the shooting in, I think it was 2015 at the concert, because there are no arms by either civilians or police, people came in and were able to shoot hundreds of people. So this is a topic I'm very, very passionate about. I did not like firearms growing up. I only got into them when I started to study the statistics, the data, the hard science, and the traditions and history. So I appreciate your time. Hopefully I haven't went over my time, but I thank you for getting to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any additional in-house comments? RJ, do you have some people signed up on Zoom?
I have quite a few, actually.
All right, well, let's get started.
I think I've got 5 here. So I'm going to send the first person who had signed up, which is Liz Marrow, I believe. The microphone, definitely a video request. I'm not seeing the mic request option here. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Now I can see the unmute button. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Liz Morrow at 10158 Sudbury Drive. And I just had a few questions about the preserve at Pine Creek. I know these won't be answered tonight, but I just wanted to put them out there on the record. The development will be behind my house down below the hill. So I'm up above on the top of the hill. And I do have questions and concerns about the stability of the hill. in particular with the soil content. I don't know if we were able to see the results of the geotech survey that was done or if that was already finished. But just the quality of the soil. I don't know if any of the residents have been back there on the hill, but they did do some slicing of the hill already. And where they dug into the ground, where all the roots are, that soil, when it gets wet, it is basically like quicksand. I don't know if anybody knows what oobleck is. Some children do that in school. You take cornstarch and water. It's a non-Newtonian liquid. It looks like a solid, and sometimes it looks like a liquid, and it kind of goes back and forth. And that's what that soil looks like when it's wet. And thankfully, there's the roots that are holding it together. But I just wonder what would happen once those trees, some of those trees are taken down. And I know, they're still going to leave a lot up. But it just makes me question the stability of the hill for everybody up above, what that's going to do. I also have a question on, based on the way that the property zoning is going to be. There's going to be some long strips. Again, I think this is based off of the old plan. I don't know if this has been revised, but from just the pictures I have from the old plan, it looks like some of the houses further down that road, their properties are going to be kind of like thin and long to stretch to Minert. I just have a question, if those the new property owners will be able to take out all the trees if they wanted to, or build on that property. I'm just curious. I know the developers maybe changed the development to be able to save more of that hill and more of the trees. And if so, if that was the reasoning behind that, I just want to say thank you. We really appreciate that. But I'm just curious if there's going to be anything built into, if there's going to be any mandates around that, if property owners are allowed to mow down all those trees if they wanted to, or if there'll be any kind of, like I said, mandate where they would have to leave those up. So that's all. Those are my questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments. RJ, next person, please.
All right, give me 1 second. I am looking for Mary Ann Love.
Okay, I unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm a 52-year resident of McCandless and also a member of the Coalition for Safe Places. After hearing the public comments tonight, you all have my great empathy. It's important to me again to thank the volunteer council members who give a lot of their time and effort to help the residents of McCandless, a job they rarely get thanked for and usually only hear from residents when they're disgruntled. And unfortunately tonight, I'm one of the latter. I'll begin with a couple of things that I said at the September 13th council meeting. Again, we in the coalition are not against shooting ranges, but are against when one is located so close to so many nonprofit institutional organizations that are correctly classified as institutional zoning. And we're supposed to ignore a shooting range that abuts an Orthodox church and is across the street from a Catholic grade school, a university, and a large convent for currently working and retired Catholic nuns, plus is close to residential housing, a continuum of care community, restaurants, and a large outdoor community gathering space in McCandless Crossing. This just isn't the place for a shooting range that sells guns, including assault weapons. Take a look at the weapons they sell on their website, MidwestShootingCenter.com. Midwest's predecessor a shooting range called Impacts got suspiciously pushed through during the previous McCandless regime without even a public meeting. And the Coalition for Safe Places fought hard against a shooting range in the same location then. We were so relieved when Impacts went bankrupt less than 2 years after it opened. We were told then that if the building didn't have the same usage for a year, its special use would expire, which was applicable on 3/16/21. But the same thing is happening again. The building was approved as an office building. The township says it can't have exclusionary zoning, so it's mandated to provide a place for a shooting range. If that's so, then it seems logical to me that the place for a shooting range probably should have been then and now in something like C1 commercial recreation. There are several parcels in McCandless with that zoning classification. Two wrongs don't make a right. I am not here to attack or to place blame, but I am here to ask. No, I'm going to say beg for help to keep this new shooting range out of the wrong location. Like the last time, it seems again the residents of McCandless are coming in last. Thinking about that, I decided to use that word last as an acronym for how I feel. L for loss of trust in township officials, and it saddens me to say that. A is for angry that this happened not once but twice. S for sad, especially for all those nonprofit institutions that are so close. And T for truthful, because unfortunately I now question, and I'm very sad to say this, but I now question the truthfulness of the township. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, the next person that we're going to have up, I'm just looking for them here. It is Peggy and Tangelo.
You're unmuted.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Tangelo, 8474 Post Road, McCandless Township, a 44-year member of resident of McCandless. And good evening to the town council members, President Kim Zachary, and my district ward representative, Trish Clunan. Trish is a real estate agent. You must recognize the importance of location, yet allowing another gun range in the McCandless Crossing Shopping Center is like a reoccurring nightmare, a cancer to our community. Town council's answer to our doubts and fears is a website? Really? So we can continue to express our fears about the sales of AR-15s, pistols, revolvers, rifles, and gunshots, or on more deaf ears. I've never felt so betrayed by the lack of actions. To say the least, this has become more than a disappointment to everyone on the coalition who worked so hard to continue to reach out for the protection of our children, seniors, religious communities, the hospital, and the entire community. The last gun range Impact went bankrupt, owing thousands of dollars in unpaid rent. Let us never forget the gun tragedies of the past in similar locations. This is an educated community that should never forget nor forgive the unnecessary violence and sins of the past. God help us all. As a community activist, I won't forget nor forgive come election day. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Vince, did you have a separate comment?
I'm sorry, I'll put them right back on the screen. Hang on.
They often make separate comments, so I just thought I'd ask.
Vince and Peggy, if you're still there, I'm sending you another camera and mic request so you can come back on in case Vince has a comment.
I just have a clarification. One of the earlier speakers mentioned that you had to travel extremely long distances if we didn't have the gun range in McCandless Crossing, and that's totally untrue. There are several gun ranges, at least 3 and maybe 5 within a short distance of McCandless. And one is I'm a member of, and it's in Marshall Township. And there's another one in Ross Township. And there's also a state game lands gun range in Marshall Township as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, RJ.
Yes, that is going to be Kathy Belkastro. I am just looking for Kathy on the feed now.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'd like to speak on the shooting range. I'm at 106 Elm Road, and that's in Ross. McCandless Crossings is a beautiful example of a.
Excuse me, Kathy, I apologize. Did you say that you are from Ross?
I am in Ross.
I apologize, but we have a rule that only citizens of McCandless may speak at our town meetings. We would, however, welcome if you wanted to send an email to council and make sure that everyone read it, but I do apologize.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, sorry for that mistake. I've got one more person that is signed up to speak here, and that is Amy Phelps.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
So yes, I am a 36-year resident at McCandless, and I live at 10166 Sudbury Drive. My husband and I are the original owners of the house in Nob Hill, which is up on the hill above the Pine Creek Preserve. And I have spoke originally about the integrity of the hillside. My husband and I did attend all of the planning commissioning, and I think the engineers did a lot of due diligence and asked a lot of questions. So I'd like to thank them and everyone else on that commission or that committee for their time. I know that everybody's lives are busy, and it's very kind of you to give your time. And so I got to believe that there were a lot of very good questions from the engineers, and I got to believe that they worked things out with the developers. I was only made aware of today that there is a study by the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm a little unclear as to who commissioned that study and where that's coming from, but I would like to reiterate what Marcy said earlier, Miss Pearson earlier. I think it's great that they're here. Their expertise is phenomenal. And I would like to urge you to think about the timeline, as was said earlier. I'm not exactly sure who commissioned them and what the plan is for their report. But I know that there's been an awful lot of damage and an awful lot of flooding that has been occurring and getting worse. On top of that, we are having more trees falling down on Minert Road and have had our power outage multiple times due to trees that are falling. So I got to believe that has something to do with it, which is a second concern for the integrity of the land. So I really, I don't want to belabor this because it's been a long night and we've had a lot of people. And they've all had very good comments and very good concerns. So I think this is kind of like putting the cart before the horse because we haven't really heard the final plan that the developer is actually putting forth. But I'm a little unclear as to what that timeline is, who commissioned and what we plan to do with the Army Corps of Engineer assessment, and what is, while it's nice that the developer gave back some land for our mitigation, that I'm assuming is going to be on the township bill. And how is that all being factored in when we make this decision? So I don't want to belabor everybody's night. I thank you for the time. I thank you, council, for listening to everyone and giving of your time to make very important decisions about our community. And this one is, along with the other ones that people were commenting on tonight, all very important. So I will be interested in hearing what the developer has to plan and what the council might feel about their proposal. And I would also like to add one more piece to just saying, I think we really do need sidewalks, especially with this pandemic. There have been so many walkers up and down Minot Road, and it is a dangerous place without the sidewalks. It would be a lot nicer for us. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate hearing the future timeline and how this is going to pan out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Amy.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else on Zoom?
I have no one else that signed up to me. I don't see anything in the general chat box. Just check in. There was no messages sent to the town council main feed account, right?
No.
All right, then that's everyone that signed up with me.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to the sidewalk plan presentation. Mike?
Good evening. Take my mask off. RJ, am I okay where I'm at?
Yes, I can hear you okay. And just let me know if you want me to put anything up on the TV screens. Tell me the file name. I've got them saved the way you sent them.
Michael Haberman with Gateway Engineers. Presumably you've gotten a copy of a summary report that I put together last week discussing the Perry Highway MTF grant that was awarded to the town and has been brought up a couple of times here in public comment. Essentially what we looked at was, let me step back. When the grant was awarded, number one, when we assist the town with applications for grants, I'm gonna get on a soapbox just for a minute. The effort, and I've said this for years, in all municipalities that I work for and for all clients that I work for, the effort that is required for these grant applications is relatively minimal when you consider the amount of money you're seeking and the types of projects that you're trying to get money for. So essentially you may spend $1,000 to $1,500 putting together documentation and an application for a $500,000 project, or sometimes even $1 million, $1.5 million project. And it's really, a lot of it is based on opinions of probable cost, desktop reviews of things. There's no real hard engineering to it. So that was what was done 3 years ago when the application was prepared, to come up with the $406,000 that was awarded. Now, when the money was awarded and we now start to go into the process of designing and permitting, surveying and identifying what we're really up against, that's when we initially raised the concern that there may not be enough money there based on what we're actually getting into out here, as far as right-of-way, utilities, and some other issues that we ran into. So we posed the question, hey, instead of going full bore right off the bat with spending $50,000 on survey and design, why don't we do some preliminary design, get some hard numbers for a cost estimate, so that we can get our hands around whether or not the money that was awarded was going to be enough to complete this section of sidewalk.
And that's where we had come up with, this is probably going to exceed $500,000 based on several things. Like I mentioned, the right of ways, utilities, things like that. And also construction costs over the past couple of years, they've always been volatile, but over the past couple of years have been really volatile, really volatile. It's hard to get materials. Contractors are understaffed. And a lot of the bids that we've been seeing over the past year and a half of the pandemic are significantly higher than what they had traditionally been and what we would be expecting. So when we updated this, we took all that into consideration, and we just wanted to make the town aware, which is what started this process. Hey, per the grant agreement, anything over the 406 has to be funded by the town for the purposes of this project. So where that started the discussion of what are our options, and that's what we kind of have outlined here in the report that was sent last week. We looked at a few options, 4 options, in particular for keeping the sidewalk where it is or where it was proposed and where the money was awarded, but potentially scaling back the project so that it can fit within the grant monies that were awarded. And specifically what we looked at was getting the sidewalk from Longview to the north to get to the first commercial property, the Lincoln property, the Lincoln car dealer property, which would at least get the ability for residents in that neighborhood to get past that section and onto the property where commercial and, use the parking lot or whatever it is, but not actually have a formal sidewalk. There are some challenges with the commercial properties that are out there. They've got parking that goes right up to the right-of-way line. It sits higher than the curb line. Dropping a sidewalk in there is going to either remove parking or require some cheek walls or things like that in order to maintain it. There's also a fire station mast arm that's there that's costly to remove and replace. There's 5 fire hydrant that would need removed and replaced. And there's some other utilities in that area. So we concentrated in this report on looking at, can we get the sidewalk from Longview up to the Lincoln property within the grant fund amount. So that's what's summarized here in the first part of the report. The options that we looked at, essentially there were 2 options. I'll discuss the difference between the 4, but there were really 2. One being put the sidewalk in and grade the hillside back to the property with a 2-to-1 slope or a 2.5-to-1 slope. And then the second option would be you put the sidewalk in and you hold the ground back and the yards back with walls. So those were really the 2 options we looked at. In addition to that, there are 2 utility poles in front of those 3 residential properties. One of them is just a power service drop pole, relatively cheap to move. RJ, can you pull up that picture of the power drop utility pole with Firestone in the background? It's in the report.
Okay, the one that's labeled grant alternative summary. Is that correct?
Well, the PDF with the report that I sent last week, there was a couple of photos of the utility poles in there. If you don't have them, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, give me 1 second. I'm gonna look.
That looks like one of the pictures.
It is in the grant.
Yeah.
The alternative summary.
Okay.
It's pictures 7 and 8.
It should be at the very end, the last 2 pages of the PDF.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yes, I can pull that up.
Yeah, go if you want to go to the first photo 1, I'm calling poll 1. This is the challenging pole that's out there that's got high voltage on it. It's got 3-phase power on it in multiple directions. It's also got communications and some other things, and it's guide back into the hillside there. So alternative or options 3 and 4 that are outlined in the report revolve around leaving that pole where it is and having the sidewalk wrap around behind it with either grading or a wall. So really the options 1 and 2 are the same as 3 and 4, except for 3 and 4 don't relocate this pool because this is a $25,000 to $30,000 pool relocation. The second pole, the next picture, RJ, that's just a service drop pole. You can see it's just got, probably got some Verizon and cable and a power drop on there. So that's just a few $1,000 pole relocation. So all of the options assume that would be moved back to facilitate the sidewalk construction. So that's all outlined in the report there. And so then the cost estimates now that we're coming up with for that, call it the reduced scope of with the project that was awarded, range anywhere from 205,000 to 290,000, which would obviously be beneath the 406,000 that was awarded for the project. In addition to that, we also looked at alternative locations for these funds. We looked at 4 different alternatives. Those are also outlined in our report. This would be for a scenario where if it's determined for whatever reason, the challenges associated with it, the costs associated with it, or whatever, the redevelopment of that property, if that were to happen, and whatever the reason, if the town were to decide, let's see if we can reallocate this fund to another project. We wanted to have a list of a few projects that have been identified throughout our process that we've been going through, identifying these future plan for sidewalk linkages in the town for you all to consider. So that's also outlined in here. The 4 alternatives we looked at were Perry Highway, near the CCAC North Campus at their driveway. To the north of that driveway, there's no sidewalk, but if you were to look at it online or to drive past it, you would see it's clearly a walking path. The grass is worn out and it's dirt from there all the way up to Old Perry Highway. Second alternative we looked at was Anglemar Road on the north side, right outside here from Grubbs Road, which would be where the other MTF grant is going to get the sidewalk down to that intersection of Grubbs and Anglemar. This would take it over to Coomer, which then gets you into the North Park. Third alternative, Richard Road on the south side of Richard Road, which would take you from Forest Oaks Drive up to Perry Highway and the Wexford Flats. There's a link missing there from all that residential up to the Wexford Flats commercial area. And the fourth was just finishing the link on Thompson Run Road south of the 8500 Thompson Run apartment project. They're going to put the sidewalks to their property line. And there's one more link there that would get it down to Hazlet Road and I forget what the recreation facility is on that corner there, but that would be the other alternative. So we prepared pretty detailed conceptual designs for these without survey, but using LiDAR mapping and aerial mapping. We got construction cost items, actual construction cost quantities, grading quantities, utility relocation numbers, like detailed construction cost estimate for those. To identify what those projects would cost. Those were outlined in my report as well. So ultimately, the decision I think that the council needs to make is, one, to determine whether we want to proceed with the project that was awarded the funds at its full scope and the potential for that scope to exceed the money that was awarded, or pursue it at a reduced scope to get to that commercial property, and potentially even a little further if we want to try to use all the funds, which I think we would try to if we can. And then if not proceeding with that project in one manner or another, do we try to seek a reallocation of those funds to one of those other alternatives? So I think that's what we're summarizing in the report for discussion and really for you guys to consider to determine how you want to move forward. And I can answer questions or
questions from council. Councilmember Smith.
Oh, yeah, under the terms of the grant, could we do one of the reduced scope projects at Longview plus one of those other sites? Or does it have to be, if it's either, all Longview or we have to completely change location?
So for the purposes of these MTF grants, and I've been involved with several in other communities, the ability to either reallocate the funds to another project or to reduce the scope of a project because you're expecting the cost to exceed the amount that was awarded, that process is worked through whoever the representative is that the town worked with that application to get the funds. So each area state representative kind of gets certain amounts of monies for projects in their area. So they ultimately make that determination. We were involved in one in South Fayette where that representative's office was amenable to reallocating the funds due to some issues to another project. So I think it's case by case. I think that process would have to be a discussion between the town and whoever the rep is that the funds came through. But I think that that's certainly feasible, at least for the discussion of, we're going to use as much of the funds as we can to get up to the rest of the commercial development within the Wexford Flats. But because of challenges in front of those two commercial properties, we could, potentially request that the remainder or some of those funds be used for a part or one of these other links.
Right, because it looks like that the Thompson Run project could be paired with one of the reduced scope up there and still be under that grant amount.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Really with any of them other than the one with the walls and relocating both of the utility poles, that one would get a little close, but
yeah.
And then ultimately, we have an estimate in here as far as what getting a grading easement is going to cost from those property owners. But that whole process has to be borne out with, once the plans and it's determined how much of an easement's needed from them, then, there's a negotiation there's an offer, and it may even get to the point where it's got to be an assessed value. So we've estimated that based on experience with similar projects, but that's a cost that is really an unknown until you get to the point where you're actually seeking to get it.
Okay, and these estimates now, do they reflect, just from working with other organizations, my understanding right now is estimates for anything like this are coming in between 20 and 30% higher than the quote unquote norm?
Yes.
Do these reflect that kind of, whatever you want to call it, supply chain problem premium or, whatever?
These costs are the latest and greatest unit costs for these construction cost items from projects that we've bid and are being constructed this summer or now.
Okay.
So it's the current bid, and then we also have a 15% contingency in there just to cover some of that volatility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council members? Yes, Councilmember Woods.
Thank you. I have a comment. Councilwoman Sponholz was unable to attend the meeting tonight and asked me to read a statement on her behalf. I'd like to do that now. Due to my absence from tonight's town council meeting, I have asked Councilmember Woods to read some brief comments concerning the discussion regarding sidewalk project alternatives to be funded by a previously approved grant. While I support options that effectively provide safety and usefulness for the greatest good of the community, I believe a sidewalk extension from Longview to the beginning of the Flats Business District, even if not fully connected, needs to remain as a primary consideration. However, since the residential properties along Route 19 associated with this sidewalk may be considered for rezoning, it would be more beneficial to delay any final decisions on sidewalk project locations in the event these properties are redeveloped with a requirement for sidewalk installation paid for by private parties. I fully support the effort to have council carefully consider all of the options presented, but since the Longview sidewalk extension was the stated purpose of the approved grant, and in fairness to the neighborhood it would benefit, I am in favor of tabling any final decisions to move grant monies to alternate locations until the rezoning matter is fully determined in the upcoming meetings.
Are there any other council comments? Councilmember Smith?
This question is probably for Bob. Is there any timing issue on using the grant funds?
There is timing issue, June of next year.
June 30th, 2022.
So we, more than likely, we would have to seek some type of an extension regardless of where we go with this project. But my experience has been that as long as we're moving forward on the project that's granted. Sometimes in 6-month increments, sometimes a year.
Yeah.
My concern would be, I get what Councilmember Sponholz's statement was getting at with that, and I agree with it. I don't know if waiting for whatever might happen with the properties up there in terms of rezoning, I just don't know how those timelines kind of line up with each other. Because it seems like the rezoning, we're not hearing it tonight. I don't know when it'll be re-presented. But I would worry that by holding off and waiting for that might be one of those circumstances where somebody would say, you're not moving forward with the project, you're on hold, and so you're going to lose the funds. That would just be my concern. I just want to raise that as a concern to make sure we don't fall into that trap.
And my only actual recommendation in here was to request an extension.
Right now, period, regardless of anything else.
Correct.
Get started on it.
Because even if tonight you said, go with the project in front of up to the first commercial
Right.
property,
We still need
the
more
June
time.
30th date is
Not gonna work.
construction completed and reimbursement sought. And
Oh, is that what it's not just being allocated to a project, it's actual construction complete.
completed and you guys being invoiced by the contractor and requesting reimbursement by June 30th.
Done.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, so that's
Well, we've been sitting on this grant for how long? How long have we been sitting on
probably
this money?
18 months or more.
18 months
yeah, more
already.
than that.
We've been with this. So it's getting time to be thinking about, what we're gonna do.
If anything, with the discussion on the potential rezoning of that property and, the timeline that would take with a rezoning and then land development, I mean, that's a ways off before you would actually see something come to fruition. So if the town decides to move forward with, a reduced scope project, it would lean me towards recommending you look at the option where you're just grading behind the sidewalk, so you're not building a wall that's going to end up getting torn out if it gets redeveloped in 24 months. At least at that point, the sidewalk would be in there, and then whatever dirt moving they're doing with the project, they'd be able to do without ripping out new stuff.
Other comments? Questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Woods.
I have a comment on my own behalf this time. So this is my last meeting, so I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in here for when the decision is made about this. The applicant withdrew their application to have that rezoned. We don't know when or actually if they're going to reapply to have that area rezoned. And I would advocate for this. We've sat on this long enough. I think some form of sidewalk needs to go in that location with this grant money. I'd love to see part of it also go, as Councilmember Smith pointed out, to Thompson Run. If we could do 2 things with it, that'd be fabulous. We can't predict what's going to happen with the rezoning. And I think just waiting any longer is, it could be another year, it could be 20 years. We don't know. So there's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
I agree with that 100%.
The only other thing that I just wanted to add that I didn't point out is when we put together these 4 options, these detailed design concepts and cost estimates, my recommendation was that we include a 2-foot, whether it's grass or stone, or a 2-foot buffer behind the curb before we start the sidewalk, based on what I observed when I was out there. As you're leaving southbound on Perry Highway, approaching the Firestone and getting ready to head down that hill there's a significant increase in speeds. And that was also identified in the preliminary traffic study was done for the Marrow property. I think they had 58 miles per hour just as you pass Longview. It's a little teeth chattering to be standing right next to the road. If a sidewalk were there, I try to imagine it myself as I'm standing out there. I would be uncomfortable unless I were all the way at the backside of the sidewalk based on how the speed of the vehicles. So these alternative designs or these options include pushing that sidewalk back and putting a 2-foot buffer behind the curb before the sidewalk's there. The disadvantage to that is that it, it pushes the grading back further into the site and easements and things like that. So once a decision is made, if we're going to move forward with that project, we'll need, you guys to make a decision on whether we tuck it right up against the curb or we include a buffer.
Any other comments? Council is not going to be making a decision on this tonight, but I think, and Steve, I know you're on here. Is it okay, since the engineer has told us that we have to get an extension no matter what we do? Is it okay to charge him with getting an extension, or do we have to, in the extension, name what we exactly want extended?
It'll be coordinated through whoever the application was submitted through at your rep's office.
Okay.
So Bob, you were involved with those, I believe, with the application. Yeah, so they'll let Bob know, hey, send us a little narrative, send us whatever they ask for, we can help put together.
Okay, but we can do, council can do that with that. Steve, I know we didn't. want
Yeah, you don't need to do a motion to do that. I think it's fair
Okay,
just to.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
We can handle that administratively.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So I still want a head nod to make sure that everyone is on board with, we've been told we have to have an extension regardless of anything we do. So we'd like to get started on that sooner than later. If everybody's good with that, getting the extension, right? Okay, all right, good. It looks like approval to go ahead and get that extension.
I'll work
started.
with Bob on that.
All right. All right. Yes. Okay, I think that would be fine. We will take 5 minutes at the timer. 5-minute recess for everyone. Thank you. All right, reports of committees, administration and finance.
Okay, we have a few items on the agenda tonight. First is to review check listing number 8 dated August 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2021, totaling $1,425,552.09. Is submitted to each member of council and posted on the bulletin board and town website. Anybody have any questions about any of those particular checks? Very nice. I did have one.
Okay.
There's a small one. 17608,
Can you tell me what page?
page 3 of 16. There are small amounts, but do we pay taxes to ourselves?
We have 5 properties that are used for non-municipal purposes.
Oh.
And so in order to maintain those properties, we have to pay the small amount of property taxes.
Any other questions about the checklist? Hearing none. Next item, we're going to review the monthly financial summary and dashboard report as submitted to council. Anybody have a question on anything there? Hearing none. Basically, we're on budget, pretty much.
Correct. Consistent with prior year and within budget, we will see additional increases in the revenue percentages as we collect additional property tax through after the discount period, as well as additional earned income and real estate transfers.
For those that don't see all the details.
Yes, I can pull down.
Okay, no, we got how much money from the federal government, which is the first part of our.
We get a total of well, we've gotten the 1.4 million so far, which is half of the 2.9 roughly.
What sort of legislative pact, what's that one called, or there were so many acts?
The American Relief.
I have it pulled up here. It's from the use of the funds is for the American Recovery. Sorry, I said I had it and then I don't. It's through the department, the American Rescue Plan.
So we've received 1.4, the 2.8.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. The third is the McCandless Industrial Development. No meeting. The fourth, North Hills Council of Governments. No meeting, right? No meeting. Fifth, Pittsburgh North Regional Chamber of Commerce. That's me. We announced the event the political event they're having with the members in the beginning of the meeting. Then we also shared the pit capstone project with the chamber. They were very impressed with it. They wanted to offer all of the students that participated in that free student memberships to the chamber, and they wanted to meet with them and hear more about their ideas. So
Awesome.
it was a good.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was well received. And next up is report of the grant writer ad hoc committee. I'm not sure who chairs that.
I can just
Trish, I
speak
think
to
Trish
that.
does.
Yeah, we have not been able to have a meeting, and I'm hoping that we can get that a meeting together of our committee in the coming weeks, but one thing, hopefully the committee may be able to help me with, I have been speaking with professional grant writers, and I'm hearing more over and over that being a municipality, it's hard to get many of the grants other than what is coming from state and federal sources. So I think I feel like there are options out there. I just haven't found the person who is able to speak to that and have experience in that. So if anyone on the council does know somebody, I would appreciate a name and I will call them. Thank you.
Next up, report of the budget committee. We had a meeting that I was unable to attend.
We just went over some priorities of from council members to help give some guidance to Trish and Bob with some priorities on the budget.
Very good. Next up, report of the junior council member.
Have any questions?
Good evening, council. I submitted my report on masking in NA and the different changes to the first couple weeks of schooling. Is there any questions?
We'd like to welcome our new junior council member here. This is Gannon Sprinkles. This is his first meeting and his first report. So that is posted on the website for everyone to look to get his insight. He also will serve as a liaison from council to hopefully get all the people at NA interested in local government. Big task for you. And he's also helping run our, is it Instagrams that we have? Instagram account.
Tell us a little more about yourself, what grade you in.
I'm in 12th grade. I run track. I participate in the both musicals and plays. I'm in Model UN, student council, class council, take several AP classes. Whole thing.
Well,
I'm glad to be here.
welcome. We're glad to have you.
Any questions about the report?
I have a comment. I do want to thank you for the report because even as a parent with NA students, the entire process was very confusing and frustrating for all of us in our community. And I appreciate the thoroughness. And what I would hope is with these reports, I would love to hear more about your perspective, maybe a little editorializing or even talking with other, fellow students and peers to hear how they feel about these kind of subjects as well is the kind of things we'd love to hear as council.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Okay, Planning and Zoning Commission. You have your zoning report. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to help answer that. Some of those things will be coming forward. And the Planning Commission. And anything from the zoning hearing board? Trish?
There was no meeting in September.
Okay, all right, no meeting. Okay, so now we have our Preserve at Pine Creek presentation, and this will be from Mr. Albright from Gateway. No.
Mike will be.
I have the developer's engineer here, Tyson Miller. I just sent him a mic and camera request.
Okay.
Tyson, there you are. I can pull up any documents for screen share the way that we typically did it when the planning commission meetings were virtual. So just let me know.
Did you send Josh a request as well?
Oh, you know what? I did not realize that he was on here, but I can do that.
He's in the room. Oh, he's in the room. That's right.
Oh.
Forgot.
Because he's not on
Sorry.
Zoom.
Go ahead and unmute, Josh. I don't say it at home.
So if you can share the subdivision plan that was sent this morning, RJ, and then I think Josh will probably start in with a little bit of an overview, and I can talk about some technical aspects of it, and also talk about some of the comments we heard earlier.
Can everyone
is
see
it.
that? Sorry, had to find my unmute button. This is page 2. This is page 1. Is that what what we're looking for?
Correct.
Okay.
So Josh, you want to start, and then I'll hop in.
All right, good evening, council. Josh Adamek with Pine Creek Holdings. We're here to talk about 485 Pine Creek Road. And this has been a long process through the planning commission. We've had several times we went back and revisited the project and scaled it back. So we originally had 31 lots in the subdivision on a total of 35 acres. And we had some variances, some modifications that we were asking for. We eliminated all of those. And we are now down to 10 lots in total. So there's 4 lots on Pine Creek Road, and then there's 5 or 6 estate lots out back. You can see up at the top of the plan there's the 5 estate lots, and then down below, 5 of the estate lots, and then the 6th lot is on the second page. Down below, the 6th lot is over there. So down below, you'll see the lots that front Pine Creek. That's 4 lots. And what we have now, we've been working with Mr. Grimm and RJ. We've been discussing donating a large portion of the land to McCandless Township for a future stormwater management plan. And that'll be beneficial in many ways. Primarily, the way that I look at it is that's the first part of the stream in McCandless Township. So I don't know much about, the watershed or things like that, but I would imagine that, if you can capture, make an impact at the first part of the stream, that only helps everything downstream. So we have a little over 6 acres that we're planning to work with Mr. Grimm and RJ and Dan over at Gateway to donate that portion of land. And that's what's labeled parcel A. Then there's an area that wraps up along Minor as well, which will allow for an additional storm bank improvement plan. And I know, there was a lot of talks about funding and things like that, but what we're offering is to donate this land at no charge to the town of McCandless, and that would allow McCandless Township to use that land as equity to obtain grant fundings for their future stormwater management plan. And there were some other comments about the timing of the project. The way we're looking at it is this is 2 separate projects. We're donating the land for the stormwater management, and our development is 100%, or it's out of the floodplain, it's out of the floodway, and with our engineering, I mean, it's a net zero impact on the streams and on the waterway. So with our donation, that's going to allow for improvements of the stream, improvements of the current issues that many of the neighbors are experiencing, both adjacent to the property and downstream. So where we're at with the project in general is there's the 6 estate lots out back that'll be serviced by a private driveway off of Minor, and then the 4 lots that front Pine Creek, those will all have front entrance driveways off of Pine Creek with separate curb cuts. So I can answer any questions, but that's a brief summary on the report or on the project.
I'll make a couple comments if council so pleases. So just to expand upon what Josh had said and to address some of the comments from earlier. So the stormwater management for our development, there are 2 proposed stormwater management areas that handle the runoff from our proposed impervious surfaces, as well as some proposed on-lot controls, which would consist of rock sumps. So those, as Josh said, are outside of both the floodway and the floodplain. The parcel A area that Josh had described in detail, a large portion of that is within the floodplain. And to address one of the comments from earlier, that does sound somewhat unusual, and that would not be allowed for a stormwater management area for a private development, but to manage public projects, stormwater projects like this, it's not uncommon. As a matter of fact, I'm actually designing 3 similar projects in my own borough where I'm the borough engineer. So as Josh indicated, this is the town's opportunity to capture stormwater as far up in the watershed as possible. Obviously, there are other upstream municipalities, but this is really the point where McCandless has an opportunity to address that. And as Josh mentioned, in terms of the timing, this was the first that I had heard about the Army Corps project. But again, there is a long permitting process that would need to take place to develop that parcel A as a stormwater management area because it is in the floodplain. So I think there are some timeline consistencies there between that and the timing of getting that Army Corps report. But I'm assuming that the gist of that Army Corps report is that you need to slow the water down, and to do that you're going to need to build public improvements. And there are some other ones that the town has already implemented over the years and on some of the other stream sheds. But here's an opportunity to make a bigger facility than some of the other ones that I've seen. So wanted to also point out, as Josh mentioned, there's been a kind of a long process through this, through a zoning hearing board presentation, various iterations of the plan to the planning commission. And through that process, we've tried to work with some of the neighbors that have voiced their opinions and concerns, some of which you spoke earlier. We have had several public meetings outside of the town sponsored meeting. So there was one in person and one virtual meeting. So, to the best of our ability, we've tried to address questions, comments, and concerns and refine the plan along the way. One of the recurring comments today was about slope stability. We have done a geotechnical investigation and have had a little bit of a back and forth with the town's engineer on finalizing that report. So our intent this evening is just to kind of present this plan in general terms and be back again next month, at which point, we have to submit to the latest outstanding letter from Gateway and button up any technical comments, such as a very few minor outstanding comments on the slope stability report and stormwater management report. One of the other things that I'll mention here as a result of the iteration through the plan and the planning commission, as Josh mentioned, there were quite a few more lots. There was what we call a double-sided road where there were lots on the high side and the low side. So with this current iteration, we are removing quite a bit less trees than we were previously. And I can certainly articulate what those respective areas are if that's important to the council, just again to show you the iteration of the plan throughout this process. We have had the plan viewed by the town's fire marshal and other utilities. So, we believe that generally speaking, we've gotten most of the technical hurdles out of the way at this point. We're also coordinating with PennDOT for the lots that front along Pine Creek for a new highway occupancy permit for those new driveways. Be happy to take any questions or go into more detail as anyone sees fit, or certainly we can address those next month.
On the north property, how many trees are you keeping, or what's the rough area of trees you're keeping, and how close are you grading at all to that north property? line? Because there was a couple questions about slope stability.
Yeah. Tyson, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, just give me a second to pull that up. Let's see here.
The greatest disturbance was on lot 6 that got up into the hillside. Yeah, on the
Yeah,
left.
lots of
And
sticks.
we
Yeah, RJ, do you want to bring up the grading plan?
we ended up adding a retaining wall behind the home.
Yes,
So that
so
it brought the cut significantly down the hillside.
the last plan set that I have prior to this subdivision plan from today is the revisions dated May 19th. If you can tell me what the page number, you know, the page code, you know what I mean? I have all those PDFs loaded and I can pull any of them up.
201 looks like it would be the right page.
Okay. Got 201. And
I'm trying to see if that date is.
now, just, I mean, I think that everyone's aware that the subdivision lines have been redrawn on this latest iteration, but in case it's unclear, these flag lot areas are no longer incorporated in the proposed subdivision plan you all are looking at tonight. That could be approved without those public frontages via a modification request if council so chooses. Tyson, please let me know where you'd like me to zoom in, if anything.
I think unless anyone needs you to zoom in, that is sufficient.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to get a measurement here. Just give me one more second.
Tyson, if I'm not mistaken, all along there was on the recent plans, there was less than 12 acres of disturbance in total on the 35 acres.
I will confirm that in a moment. So the absolute closest point of that limited disturbance is a little over 80 feet at that closest point in the upper left. Which again, for those, I'm sure most of the folks on the council are familiar with reading plans, but you can see the light colored existing contours, which are already fairly steep. And then we have a proposed cut slope there. Yes, so that's the subject of the majority of the slope, the analyses in the slope stability assessment report. And let's see here.
So
I believe
you're
here.
getting 80 feet
Yes.
to the property line.
At the high point.
Correct, at that closest
Yeah,
point.
there's a lot more than that.
And up along the top is Sudbury, the folks that commented earlier.
Yeah. And you have a geotechnical engineer that's making sure the slope that you do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
In other words, I don't know much of anything about wells,
Mhm.
but the one gentleman was concerned about well water.
Yeah.
Is there a study? How do we know or make sure that?
Yeah, that was Mr. Camarda there and some of the other neighbors as well. But yeah, I mean, that's a topic of concern and rightfully so. There are ways to work around that with not using a vibrating roller when we're grading. We also discussed, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Camarada, but we discussed, or there was emails going back and forth about doing a water quality test prior to starting this site work and construction on his well, which I believe you said you had one done recently. So we would have that test done before the site work started, and then we would do another test afterwards. So got to work out the details on that, but you know, that is a concern, rightfully so. I have sympathy for that. I lived on the cistern for a while, so I know it sucks not to have water. So
I appreciate you reaching out and being a responsible developer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Are you on a well too, sir? Okay, I don't remember that part, but yeah, same thing would apply. Because this gentleman's right next door. Mr. Camarada is across the street.
Is there any parcel, there won't be any structures in is it a 50 and 100-year floodplain?
No structure, sir.
No structure.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the plan that you see in front of you, there's a kind of a red cross-hatched area. That is the floodway. And then there were two black lines on opposite side of the creek, black dashed lines. One is the 100-year floodplain and the other is the 500-year floodplain.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Woods?
Thank you. Perhaps I don't have the complete packet, but I have just an aerial photograph from April that still shows flag lots. So, and I missed the most recent planning meeting, so I apologize. But so if you could just, if you wouldn't mind entertaining me with this question, the flag lots have been,
Yes, ma'am. The flag lots will be
but
eliminated.
you're still keeping a private driveway.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the modification request you're asking for, is that they not be attached to a public road.
Yes, ma'am. That will allow us to work through the donation of the land to McCandless.
That should be on the strip. Okay. Thank you.
Just to circle back on the previous question about the disturbance, right now we have just for the private development project, we have a little over 8 acres of disturbance of the total 35 acres.
I was wrong.
Yeah, it's got a little smaller.
I have a question. The original donation, which you're now saying is 6 hours, and this is for our engineer, which was 9 acres, is now 6 acres. And when we were looking at possibilities of what things we could do to help, flood mitigation up there, what they put forward was a $2 million detention pond, a 2 million gallon, excuse me, not 2 million, not $2 million, 2 million gallons of water. With this reduction of 3 acres, can we still get that?
Probably not. It's looking like we're losing some of the 1 to 2 acres of the prime area that is flat and can feel all the grading. So we are losing a little bit of that area. Gains in a long mine, like they said, but I think with the revised grading, we lost a little of area just south of that private drive, and we're also losing the area to the west on that plot 5, I believe it is. I think I sent that, RJ, I don't know if you have that overlay we sent this afternoon. Kind of gives you an idea of the area they're proposing to be donated versus.
Yes, give me just a moment and I'll pull that up too.
So we just got this afternoon, so we haven't got a chance to run the counts to see what.
Yeah, we gotta get this information a little sooner in the afternoon that we're reviewing it, so council can look
Yes,
at this too. So let's try to do a little better than that, please, to give us, so we can know what we're talking about. Are you pulling something up, RJ?
Yeah, I'm just getting it downloaded right now.
Because that's the whole reason we want this property, is so we can put in this big detention pond, so we can help our town as well as all of our neighbors downstream. And if we're not going to have if we're going to have all the responsibility but none of the benefit of it,
Here we go.
The magenta area was the area put in the new plan to be dedicated. And then you can see the extents, the whole line, the extents of the flood management pond we had. So to the west there was a significant part of it. So we're losing of that pond. And then it'll just be squeezed in a little bit between Pine Creek and that private drive.
what happened that we lost that?
Well, ma'am, to be honest with you, the discussions that we've had for the last several months revolved around 5 acres of donation. And then last week, we got a plan that showed over 10 acres requested. So that was a little bit of a surprise for us as well. And we went back and we looked at it. If the area that was requested also went into the lots that fronted Pine Creek, taking those lots down to a minimal size. And then it takes a big chunk out of the estate lot on the backside. So what we discussed, Tyson and I, was to donate that, stick within that marked out area, approximately the 6 acres, and then possibly have easements through some of the additional area so that a a proper plan could still be accomplished as far as stormwater management and stream bank improvements, but not actually giving ownership to that land and taking away from the future owners.
Yeah, and to articulate that latter point, that there's a required riparian buffer easement for streams as part of the new Allegheny County Act 167 plan. So as Josh mentioned, we're showing that riparian buffer and actually even increasing that riparian buffer area a little bit. So there are some projects that could be undertaken, such as you mentioned, stream bank stabilization, things of that nature within that western area.
Are there any other questions? Do you want to speak to the possible detention facilities that are to the east there, where there was talk of sidewalks? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, again, I think previously we were showing about 80 feet off a minor, which will allow us a little bit more room to do something. Now at this point, I think they came back to 40 feet, so that's what we're showing there. I think we should take a look, a couple days to take a look at that, but certainly squeeze a little bit more. It's tough to do something to 40 foot. I think a little more area there would be preferable to actually do something along the street.
And when you looked at that, was there any possibility of having a sidewalk there, or would we lose all of that stormwater possibility for that? I mean, I've looked over that edge. It looks pretty steep, pretty quick. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we didn't take a look at grade and sidewalk in there. You're right. It drops pretty quickly. I assume you need some kind of cheap walls or retaining wall in some of those portions just to make the sidewalk feasible through a couple of those parts. I think it does flatten out in some areas though.
Are there any other questions?
Right. Thank you for your
All
time.
right, thank you. Recreation Committee?
Thank you. Madam President, the Activity Advisory Committee, there is information in your packet, including a couple of proposed activities. This includes the Treasure in the Trunk event on October 9th that we would hope to have the council's approval of. A Thanksgiving turkey bingo in November. And we also had discussed a Halloween event, but as of today, the chair of that event feels we may not have the ability to get enough volunteers for it to be a success. And I think most of the members of the committee would agree that they want the event to be successful and well attended and with volunteers and participants, and we may wait till next year for our first Halloween event. Do you have any questions about the activities coming? No questions. Moving on to the Finance Development and Promotional Committee for the Heritage Center. Mr. Smith, if you have anything to add there.
Yep, the minutes are in your packet. I would point out we're going to do nominations for the open seats a little bit later, I think. But in the minutes, they are talking about signage for the Heritage Center. And I was at the meeting where they were talking about that. And it would be, the signage that they're talking about would be more of a kind of town use signage. So it wouldn't be specifically for Heritage Center messaging or events, but would be broader than that, more like a Town of McCandless sign. Bob, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or if there's any interest. I know that they were looking at potentially tapping the McCandless Industrial Development Authority, to see if they had interest in funding some of the signage. I don't know if they've actually reached out or not.
I'm not aware that they reached out and we're still waiting on the total price for the signage.
So this issue came up before council a couple of years ago, and council voted down an electronic sign at that location. And what the and you can just give this feedback to them. And what the problem was is council did not feel like at that time, things change, did not feel like at that time that an electronic sign, a modern electronic sign was in keeping with the 20th century schoolhouse. And there was also concern that there's no stop sign there. You want those signs where people are stopped at a red light with nothing to do but read the sign. So there was concern that there would be drivers would be distracted by the sign, reading the sign, and have their eyes off the road there because there's no stop there. So there was a big safety concern about about that. There's a playground right there, a fitness court is right there. So those were some of the concerns that came up last time when this was brought forward. So I just wanted to kind of give you that. Those are still my concerns from when we did this last time, but I just wanted to give you that feedback.
And I think they're also thinking, and Bob, you could correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember that meeting right, they did at least acknowledge the possibility of the sign going down at the corner instead of right next to the Heritage Center. Bob, am I right in remembering that, or did I make that up in my mind?
I did convey those past concerns that were raised during the meeting. And they did express a willingness, or I guess an interest in just having the sign at a nearby alternative location. There was nothing firm, but talking about the intersection of Grubbs Road and the intersection of Blazer Drive as possible alternatives.
Would the gateways coming to the town on McKnight Road be a better place? I mean, I would think you would get a lot more visibility there because, I mean, if you're going to the park, you're coming down this road, but that's not a lot of the town where a lot of people are on McKnight. I would think down by.
They did have other discussions about a larger scale project with multiple signs located at different entrances to the town. But I don't know if I think I probably dissuaded them from going out because then you're talking about $100,000 project or something. And and it's always something obviously we could look at, but I think that started to kind of get out of, they felt like that was starting to kind of get out of their purview as the Heritage Center to start going into these multiple signs at, multiple locations for the township and all of that. But, for us, yeah, that would be something we'd have to look at, I would think, with any signage proposal of this nature.
Grubbs and Blazer has residential properties right there. And I'm not sure if a lit up sign would be really appropriate right next to people's residential homes. So just something to think about.
And if anyone has any questions on anything else in there, feel free to let me know.
I have one question. David, do they ever rent the space out for small meetings or something? And
I don't think they rent it out. They've had events obviously there, and they did the football thing for the alumni. Was that last weekend, 2 weekends ago? I don't think they rent out the space though. Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't think they.
No, that's part of the activities advisory committee has been looking for spaces in our town, and that is not one that we have found to be available to residents.
Could it be? Could you use it?
We'd have to.
The foundation papers would have to be changed.
Yeah.
It's documented to not be used that way. Right now,
I didn't, okay.
like the class of 1980 is going to be visiting there as part of the reunion. They're encouraged to give a donation. But in the founding documents, it was decided that there would never be charges there. It would always be free and open to the public. But things can be changed. Of course, we're not sure what kind of meeting space we need right now because we're waiting for those results or the
Yes,
activities
yeah.
committee to say, what's actually available and what we need, because we don't really know yet that till we get that information, but that seems like a possibility.
Thank you.
And Mr. Smith, I understand the notorious North Hills is being held off until spring. I know that was an event that many people were looking forward to.
Yeah, they made the decision just because of uncertainty still with COVID to push that off.
Okay. We look forward to the date on that. Thank you. Moving on to the Community Day Subcommittee, we did have a wrap-up meeting, and we are, as a committee, understand that we are going to start planning for next year as early as January, and there may be changes to the future of Community Day, which possibly could include changing of the date so that we work with the other community organizations such as the churches and so forth, and instead of being on the same weekend as their events, rather complementing their events by being on opposite weekends. So definitely hope to help the committee get that date set as early as possible will be my personal choice and drive in that, but we kind of have to wait for other organizations to set their dates as well. And that concludes the report unless anyone has any questions.
Town managers report.
You all received a copy of my report. I just wanted to bring up one item just for some feedback, if you're able, and that is one of the things that we are working on as part of the 2022 budget process is taking a hard look at the HVAC system and new windows for this building. I'll say that the HVAC system is not functioning in a way that is efficient for either floor here in the building. We have cold spots, we have hot spots, but very few that are comfortable spots. And the windows were all replaced in 1993. And we do have, they're not energy efficient. And we do actually have leakage of rainwater in some areas. So that, it is getting to be more and more problematic for us in terms of that work. We have, between the two projects, we have over $800,000, $850,000 in work that would need to be done. We will try to secure grant funding for as much of that as we can. But I wanted to give you a heads up that you will see those numbers in the budget. We have been looking hard at that as an alternative, but we wanted to move purposely slowly in case we were making any other changes to the building. We didn't want to be in a position where we were undoing any rooftop work that would be done as part of this HVAC system. So I'm getting updated numbers because these are somewhat dated and based on what Mike Haberman told us with bid results. Don't know where we would be with that. We are trying to get some updated numbers so that we have a better figure to go for a grant with. But I wanted to at least give you guys the opportunity to voice any questions, concerns, any thoughts, alternatives that we should consider in the last couple of weeks of putting the budget together.
Well, I found with HVAC upgrades and new windows, there's usually a resultant savings in utility bills.
Mhm.
If the engineer can sort of at least give us a magnitude of what that would be, that then we can make our own cost benefit decision. But I know they'll improve. I just don't know how much. I think would make it a little more palatable if we knew we were saving tens of thousands of dollars over the course of time on utilities.
And that was one of the priorities that the budget committee has recognized.
Bob, do you know when the $635,000, that estimate, how long ago was that one that we received it?
That was close to a year ago. So those are stale numbers really. At this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And then another question is, so since that would, so if we we apply for some grant funding, how long would that take for something to come through where we could get an HVAC, a new system replaced?
Well, I'll say this, if we apply for the grant funding that I would be considering that is coming up and due in later October, then my guess is that we would be in a position to be able to bid that project out probably into the second quarter of 2022. And I don't know what the lead time is on any of this kind of equipment right now.
Yeah, that's the
But
problem.
I would hope that we could get started in 2022. We certainly don't want to be in a position where we're putting windows in or an HVAC system when we're approaching winter. So, I think that the timing would potentially go out as far as 2023.
So,
for
because
that work to be completed.
okay. I mean, only because, we've talked about this before about the heating, the air conditioning issues. I mean, I'm looking at in the notes, what is it, $33,000 in repairs? What if something comes up this winter and we're without heat and, it's another big bill, that we have to think that we have to take that into consideration too with the cost to fix things.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're just going to be in a position this coming winter that we would have to pay the maintenance costs to keep things going. We'll certainly do whatever we can do to improve upon what we're dealing with, but the longer term fix will probably take us the better part of a year or more to complete.
Councilmember Smith?
Bob, just out of curiosity, when was the last time there was any sort of significant capital improvements done at Town Hall?
1993.
And, I want to bring that up because we fund a lot of different authorities, organizations, whatever, and it seems to me, only being on council for 15 months, that we've neglected our own town hall in some of the funding that has gone to other organizations, where other organizations have been able to do some capital improvements and other things of that nature while we have held off. And, at some point that bill comes due. And I think if there hasn't been any significant capital improvements since 1993, and we're dealing with non-energy efficient windows and systems, sounds like the bill's kind of due on it.
Any other comments? Anything else?
No.
Okay, town attorney's report.
Thank you, Madam President. My report was part of the packet. Happy to answer any question. Usually there aren't any because they're executive sessions. So that's the end of my report.
All right, hearing none, there is no old business, so we can move on to new business. Can we have a little short ditty about the performance bond sheets?
RJ, fill in anything that you think I need to add to this, but the work that was done by the developer for the sheet store, the improvements made to the site, any public improvements that were made to the as part of the project have been completed. Gateway has inspected all of those and approved the release of the bond. What will occur is that there will be a 2-year maintenance bond on those improvements that will be in place. And that will be the performance bond will be returned upon receipt of the maintenance bond.
Yeah, just one thing to add, they actually posted the maintenance bond last October. So we've had that in place and available to us if we need it. If any of, for example, the landscaping or, you know, sort of the built up berm were to fail. They just had a couple months delay in requesting the release of the performance bond. So that is why it is now on the agenda, even though they've already posted the maintenance bond.
And this is how we do this with every developer.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions about this?
Other issues that we've been dealing with sheets or zoning related matters that are being addressed as part of as a zoning violation and will continue to be addressed as such.
All right, would someone like to make that motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Flynn.
I move to approve the release of the performance bond for the sheet store number 115 rebuild in the amount of $811,704.30. The developer has satisfied the conditions of the town engineer's recommendation letter dated August 21, 2020, which required posting a 2-year maintenance bond in the amount of $52,950.
Second.
Okay, all right, Councilmember Smith. Any other questions again? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Well, do you want to give a little short summary on
Sure.
this new thing we're kind of doing?
The item B is a consideration of a planning module, which is an official document that amends our sewer planning or sewer plan for the town. This is a requirement that DEP has for any new developments, and essentially what we are doing in this case, MTSA has reviewed the plan and approved it. Alcoasand has approved the plan, and we are essentially saying that we're approving the plan as the fact that it's in keeping with our overall sewage development plan, and that there is capacity in our system to accommodate this development. This is essentially a housekeeping item, more important on the Alcoasand sewer shed side of town than the other because of the capacity issues with Alcoasand itself. But you'll see more and more of these coming through as DEP is requiring this step, especially in the Alcoasand sewer shed.
Any questions? Calling for a motion? Okay, Councilmember Woods.
I move to approve Resolution 15 of 2021, the sewer planning module for Dialysis Clinic Incorporated.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Swiger. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item of business is just an acknowledgement that the town has received its minimal principal obligation for its police and phased out non-uniform defined contribution pension plan and money purchase plan. A short thing on
Sure.
that.
These are three documents that I am required as the administrator of the pension plan to submit to the council annually. These figures are budgeted as part of the 2022 budget. The police pension plan minimum obligation increased by about $49,000 this year over last. And that is primarily because of actuarial assumptions that have changed. A slight reduction in the assumed interest rates based on historical data. And also a slight change in mortality tables. So policemen, retired policemen are living longer. And this reflects some change to that. Eric, am I right about that?
Yeah, that's.
You're living longer?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. So that was an increase. The non-uniform, that phased out non-uniform defined benefit plan is unchanged. And the money purchase plan showed a slight reduction of about $8,000 one year over the other, and that's just simple math. There's a couple fewer people right now to include in the plan because positions hadn't been filled. So it's just a matter of that mathematics. Any questions there? And you'll see those numbers again in the budget.
What is a money purchase plan?
A defined contribution plan. Town contributes 5%, the employee contributes 5%.
Okay. All right, there's not a motion that's required for that. So the next one, see how I do on this, RJ. The owner has the lot subdivided to the middle of the duplex instead of where the duplex is split. So the property has to be changed. It's only one owner that's involved. So the property line has to be changed so that they can sell either side of the duplex. Is that right?
I think so. It's all on one lot.
You try.
If that was in there, it's basically this duplex was built on one lot and they would like to chop the lot in half in the middle of the duplex to, as you said, sell each side individually, which is quite common. There were a couple of zoning hearing board variances that this received solely because the lot could not be subdivided in any other way to sell the sides separately other than with these shorter lot frontages. So the zoning hearing board did approve that. The only other thing that I wanted to mention was the motion says contingent upon all items being addressed. In the September 20th letter, all items have been addressed. So the most recent engineering letter, which is dated September 20th, should be a clean one in your packets.
Okay. Any questions about this? All right, hearing none, the floor is open for motion. Okay. Councilmember Clooney.
I move to approve the preliminary final subdivision application submitted by Ronald Shaver, known as Panoramos Plan of Lots, located at 163, 165 East Sandal Avenue, contingent upon all items being addressed as identified in the town engineer's review letter dated September 20, 2021.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Schwager. Any other questions for RJ? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. The floor is open for the nominating committee for the fundraising, development, and promotional committee for the first term to expire December 31st, 2025. I think that's you, David.
Yep, Madam President, should I just make 2 nominations and then people can make more, or are we gonna do I nominate them one at a time?
Let's just do it one at a time because it's, things get confusing.
Okay, in that case, I think they both expire at the same time, so it doesn't matter which is which. So I would like to nominate Kevin Kennedy, who is currently serving on the committee. I'd like to nominate him to continue.
Are there any other nominations? All right. I don't think we have to second, right, Steve? We don't have to second nominations?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I didn't think we had to have a second. All right, and there are no other nominations? So just for the record, all those in favor of, somebody make the motion, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Move to appoint Kevin Kennedy to the Fundraising, Development, and Promotional Committee for a term to expire December 31st, 2025.
Thank you. Second?
Yep, second.
All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, David, you ready for the next one?
Okay, for the second open position, I would like to nominate Dan Coyne.
All right, are there any other nominations? All right, hearing none. Floor is open for the motion. David? Councilmember Smith?
I would like to move to appoint Dan Coyne to the Fundraising, Development, and Promotional Committee for a term to expire December 31st, 2025.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Woods. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I did, this wasn't on the agenda, but I wanted to kind of sneak it in here a little bit for the Activities Committee. All we need is a nod. We don't have to have a vote, but is council okay with them doing their trunk sale? And I think they said they wanted to wait on the fall festival and then on the virtual bingo. Weren't those the two?
That's correct.
All right, so let me see if I have nods for the trunk sale. Okay, looks good. So that's approved, as well as the virtual bingo. How are we doing? Give me some, yes, I got some nods here, got some nods from home friends. Okay, yes, all right, so that's approved too, so that's good.
Thank you.
We're done with that. All right, before I take a motion to adjourn, council will meet in executive session on potential litigation matters. And there will be no further business. The meeting will be completed as soon as we adjourn. So you don't have to wait around. We're not coming back after executive session. Okay, all those, do you have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Woods, second.
Second.
Okay. Swagger. All those in favor indicate to adjourn, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.
Is it the same link for executive session?